Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Toxic Crime Tuesdays. If you're new to my channel, my name is Shannon, and every single week I speak about a true crime case that has inspired me to speak out and share with you all. So if, like me, you are a desktop detective, then please subscribe to my channel and also click the like button. Maybe share my video if you think it's worthy of sharing, and also turn your notifications on so that you're notified every single time I upload a video. So this week's episode, well, they're all crazy. There's no point. I think my opening line is always, well, this week it's a crazy case. It is. They're all crazy. But I think every single case that I do is so unique to the other. Yeah, they're all just so different, and this one is completely different to any other case that I've covered, and I just felt so compelled to cover this case because, one, it just hasn't had as much coverage as what it should. It's a very, very recent case as well, and also it focuses on a subject which I think is also quite important to talk about, and that is online dating and how dangerous it can actually be. So before I actually get into the case, I just want to speak to you guys a little bit, give you a little bit of a lesson on online dating and the dangers and what you can do to, you know, to be as safe as you can, because let's be honest, especially during COVID, single people are going to date online. They are going to talk to people online using different dating apps such as Tinder and Grindr and is it Bumble? Match.com, that kind of stuff, and Plenty of Fish. They're all the ones that I kind of know of. I haven't used. I've only ever used Plenty of Fish or Tinder. Anyways. I think over the years where social media and just the internet in general has become paramount to everyone's lives and social life, and that's why dating apps and social networking and stuff has become rife, and less people are going out and approaching people and in order to, you know, go on a date. Most people that I know have met their partners through dating apps. I actually met my partner through a dating app. I met him through Tinder. So don't get me wrong, there are so many people that have had such successful relationships due to online dating, but there is still quite a high percentage of people that have sadly lost their lives due to online dating, been sexually assaulted. There has been a lot of criminal activity that has been solely down to dating apps. The number of crimes committed as a result of online dating has seen a staggering increase over the last 5 years. These crimes can include like grooming children, stalking, rape, other types of sexual assault, and even murder. And sadly, this case is no exception. A man named Kevin Bacon was basically lured in by someone that he met on Grindr, someone that he was very interested in, someone that he wanted to go and meet and could potentially have begun a relationship with. However, all those hopes diminished on Christmas Eve 2019. Just before I get any further, so that's just a little teaser for you, I just want to talk to you about how to stay safe online. There are loads of ways. You know, you can do things such as like having an alarm on you, having like pepper spray, I've even seen women that have had, which I just think it's just such a shame. Like, this shouldn't have to happen, but this is more for women that have to walk alone at night. A woman that had, I think she had keys, and they kind of, they kind of turned into, when she held them tight, I swear it was like a knuckle duster, like mini knives. It was something like that. But this is what people feel compelled to do in order to stay safe. And there is nothing wrong with being cautious, but it is just such a shame that we have to be so cautious and so careful in case we get attacked. And this case as well, which it just makes it even sadder, is that this just goes to show that this could happen to anyone. As much as it was sort of premeditated to an extent, it was very much an opportunistic murder. I don't think this person particularly sought out Kevin in particular. I don't think he was stood outside his house stalking him and he had him in mind the entire time. I think it was literally just scrolling through a dating app, found this person, got chatting to him and thought, yep, that's going to be my victim. So if it wasn't him, it could have been someone else. And that's just a really scary thought. So how to stay safe when online dating. Number one, do your research. You know, a lot of people do catfish. Sometimes it's just down to innocent reasons, such as that person just not feeling very secure about themselves and they want to use someone else's picture, which I'm not condoning, but I can empathise with that. However, there are people that use someone else's identity because they are going to do something illegal and they don't want to be found out, so that's why they use someone else's identity. So always do your research. If it seems sketchy, it's because it probably could be. So look for them online on any kind of form of social media. Get them to send you a Snapchat as well, because sometimes Snapchats they're quite hard to fake. I know that some people have. I think someone actually did that on Catfish when I was watching it, but it is quite tricky. You don't have to do this, but this is just an option. If you don't want to give out your number, you can actually use a Google Voice number instead of your own. Do not give out too many personal details. Obviously, you know, if you've met up with this person and it's progressing, obviously then, you know. But when you first started talking to them and you haven't even met them, sometimes you can just do it without realising, so just try to be a bit more mindful. Video chat before meeting, so you know exactly who you are meeting, you know the face. Also, tell your friends, even just a particular friend, if you're going to meet up with this person that you've never met before and you don't really know who they are, you've just met them through a dating app, tell your friend every little detail, like their name, give your friend this person's number, give them the location of where you're supposed to be meeting, and that brings me on to the next one, which is always meet in a public place. Do not go to their house. The obvious reasons. And luckily as well, you know, bartenders and stuff like that are really good, and they're really mindful of dating apps and people having first dates in bars and pubs and stuff. So if this person does appear to be a bit strange, just go up to the bar and just try to, I don't know, subtly explain what has happened and that you feel really uneasy. And I'm sure that bartender or whatever would help you out, and they would call you a taxi or they would stay with you. So yeah, do that as well if you do feel uneasy. Have your own form of transport, i.e. if you've got a car, drive yourself or get on public transport. Do not go in a car with the person, because we've seen it before, you know, they could easily take you off somewhere and do something bad. And yeah, that's it for all of my little bullet points of trying to stay safe online. I probably missed a few, but they were the main ones that kind of come to my mind. So yeah, just try and just be as safe as you possibly can, because the amount of crimes that are committed due to online dating is just really scary. And especially dating apps such as Tinder and Grindr, I don't know if it's changed now, but from what I've read previously with different articles, they basically don't ban people that are known sex offenders. So people that are known sex offenders can actually join these websites, which is ridiculous and really, really scary. So that's why we just need to try and keep as safe as possible, because these apps aren't overly safe or have anyone's best interests. So now we've got all of that out of the way, we are actually going to speak about Kevin Bacon. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about his background. So Kevin Bacon was 25 years old when he lost his life. He was described to be such a vivacious, joyful character. He was incredibly close with his family. He was a really just loving, sociable soul. Like anyone that met him would just instantly want to be his friend. He was just one of those people that you could just get along with. He was also very creative, very artistic, and he always wanted to be a hairstylist, and by the time he was 25 he had been for 6 years. And I actually watched an interview of his parents that said that when he was younger, I'm not too sure how young he was, but I'm guessing quite young, he was obsessed with hair from such an early age, and he would try and like French braid his mum's hair, and anyone that sort of come around to the house, his friends and stuff, he'd always want to do their hair, which I just think is really awesome, that, you know, something that you're kind of passionate about as a kid, it follows through into your adult life, and that's something that you actually pursue as a career. I just think that's really cool. And yeah, he just seemed to be a really cool, happy, just nice person. He had a good head on his shoulders. He knew exactly what he wanted. He just wanted to work hard. He wanted to hang out with his friends, and eventually he wanted to settle down and have his own family. Kevin was gay. I'm not too sure about when he come out or anything like that, but I don't think it was one of these where it was frowned upon by his parents, which I know we've seen with a lot of cases, but I really don't think this was the case. I think they were very, very supportive of his sexuality, which I just think is amazing, and that's exactly how it should be. So Kevin actually started going on different dating apps, and he specifically used the dating app Grindr, which is a dating app that is specifically for people of the LGBTQ community. So on Christmas Eve 2019 at 5:15 p.m, Kevin left his home to go and meet a guy who he had met on Grindr. He had only been speaking to this guy on that day, and he was really excited to meet up with this guy. He had been chatting to him, and he's just said it was going to be like super casual, and he was just going to invite some of his friends over, and they're all just going to hang out at this guy's home and just have some drinks, have some food, and, you know, just hang out in it for just to be super casual. And Kevin was actually texting his friend as well to kind of let him know what was going on, and to just sort of say like, look, I'm going to this guy's house tonight, we're just going to hang out, his friends are coming round, don't expect me back till quite later on. But sadly, Kevin would never make it home. So literally just an hour later, by 6:20 p.m, all contact from Kevin was cut loose. Cut loose? Cut. So this wasn't particularly alarming. You know, Kevin was 25. He wasn't one of these that was particularly glued to his phone all of the time, and his roommate was well aware that he was going to meet this person and hang out and have a few drinks and stuff, so he didn't expect him to be, you know, constantly messaging him all night. However, when it did become quite alarming and quite worrying was the next morning when Kevin didn't return home. He was really close to his roommate, and he was really close to all of his family, and his mum had tried ringing and texting him. Obviously, his roommate had been trying to get in touch with him, and there was nothing. So this did raise some concerns. And obviously, what we need to remember is, as well, it was Christmas Day. Kevin went out on Christmas Eve. And for him not to be back on Christmas Day, like, he was very, very close to his family, and they were all supposed to have like a Christmas breakfast. So it was very, very strange that he had not turned up, and they were all, especially his mother, were all just beside themselves, because they knew that it was just so out of character for Kevin that it must have been something bad. So Kevin's family actually got in touch with Kevin's roommate, and they were asking him, like, you know, where was Kevin? Was he not with you? And that's when Kevin's family found out that Kevin had actually gone to meet this man that he had only just met on that day on Grindr. So immediately alarm bells rang, and they just thought that whatever had happened to Kevin, this guy must have something to do with it, because it's pretty suspicious. So as soon as Kevin's family found this out, they go straight to the police station, and they report Kevin as a missing person. And almost immediately, which is pretty rare, there was just a huge search launched for Kevin. And they were all trying to find out all about this guy. But unfortunately, Kevin didn't really divulge that much information about this guy. You know, it's not like he was talking to him for a few months. And, you know, if you're like talking to someone for quite a while and you're building up this relationship, obviously you're going to tell your friends snippets of information and details about this person. But he had literally just met him that day, so he probably didn't know a lot to tell anyways. At this point, his family didn't really, and the police didn't really have a lot to go with. So with a lack of information, Kevin's parents and authorities just did not have a lot to work with. However, just later on that day, they would find something pretty incriminating. And that was Kevin's car found abandoned along a road near Seymour and Miller in Swartz Creek. I don't actually think I mentioned this at the beginning, which I really should have. Kevin was, well, he had lived his whole life in Michigan. So, yeah, I really should have explained that. So, anyways. So, Kevin's car was found, and inside of his car was his mobile phone. So, once the phone was found, the police were thinking, this is great. Like, hopefully we can get more information. We can find out exactly where Kevin is, and hopefully get an address of this person. As well as Kevin's phone, all of his belongings were also in the car. His wallet was in the car, so it was clear that whatever happened to Kevin, it wasn't some kind of burglary. He had a bag of clothes also in the car, but the only thing that wasn't in the car, obviously other than Kevin, was the key to the car. So immediately authorities thought this was pretty suspicious, because why would the key not be there? If Kevin was just going to get up and abandon his car and just leave it for whatever reason, surely he'd just leave his key there, as well as all of his belongings. And all around the car as well, there was just nothing to sort of suggest any kind of foul play. There was no evidence of a struggle or anything. So Kevin's parents actually organised a group search to search all around where Kevin's car was found. Now, Kevin's parents at this point, I think they in their gut knew that something was obviously quite wrong because of the events leading up to this. However, the fact that his car was just abandoned and all of his belongings were left there when he never would leave any of that behind was really terrifying to them. They just knew that something bad had happened to him. So meanwhile this search was going on, Kevin's parents had also tried to work with authorities in order to get Grindr to hand over Kevin's information and his messages, like his records and everything on Grindr. But they just wouldn't do it. They wouldn't hand over the information, which is just, it's not shocking, but it still is. I just find that really disgusting and really sketchy. I just don't understand. Well, I do, because I know exactly why they wouldn't do it. But surely you'd want to help. You'd want to be any kind of help within an investigation. I know you just want to act like you're not complacent and you'd want to not be a part of it when you clearly played some kind of, even if it's the most minuscule part. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, someone could potentially be in a lot of danger. So why would this company, well, this app, why would they not want to work with authorities in order to help find this person? I just find that really bad and disrespectful. I really do. And as I'm going into this, I know that this video is going to get taken down. I'm going to get another strike again. Oh, it's like Pizzagate all over again. Just don't come for me, Grindr, please. I'm sure you're a lovely app and I'm sure you do a lot of good in terms of bringing people together, making connections. However, you just need to pull your finger out a little bit with your policies. You need to sort it out. And when authorities are asking you for information, you need to give it. So, do it. So, yeah, Grindr would not give up this information whatsoever. They just would not budge. However, luckily, authorities managed to get some information using Kevin's phone. So they managed to find the address of the home that Kevin was going to that evening on Christmas Eve. So just a few days after, on the 28th of December, authorities show up of the home of 50-year-old David Lutunsky. This is the person who was conversing with Kevin on Grindr. So they just wanted to go to his home. They didn't necessarily, I think as a police officer, well, as an investigator, I think you always need to keep an open mind. It's never a good idea to have tunnel vision, because I think that can really complicate an investigation. So I do think it's important to keep an open mind, and generally most police officers do, and I think that's exactly what they were doing. They were just sort of, you know, they knew that he was conversing with, they knew that some of it was very sketchy and this guy could potentially have had something to do with it, but they just wanted to just kind of keep an open mind and just approach this guy, have a chat with him, and just take it from there. So when the police actually entered the home, the police found Kevin. However, sadly, Kevin was not alive. So at this point, the way that Kevin was found and the circumstances in which it occurred are just mind-boggling and just really disturbing. So I'm going to warn you, this bit's really disturbing. So when authorities entered Mark's home, Kevin was found hanging from the rafters of Mark's home. His ankles had been bound and he was hanging, and they were attached, and he was hanging upside down. Kevin had his throat cut. Sorry, it's just really disturbing. He had been stabbed in the back. It just gets worse. There were parts of Kevin's skin and flesh missing all over his body. His like as though they'd been cut off, like just chunks of them being cut off. His genitals had been mutilated. I don't know why I wanted to cover this case. This is just, I'm gonna fucking nightmares. It gets worse as well, honestly. It gets more disturbing. So I can't even imagine how authorities reacted at this point. It always makes me think when they walk into a crime scene, I always try and wonder how they're feeling in that moment. But this is a moment I cannot even try to put myself in those shoes and try to understand how that felt, to walk into that home and see that poor man mutilated and hanging upside down with his throat cut. And what's even worse as well is that when police were interviewing Mark, he was so blasé about it. It's like, okay, I guess he couldn't really deny it because, you know, it was there. You can't really, I suppose you could probably blame someone else, but it'd be a really sticky situation to get out of. You'd have to be very, very intelligent and manipulative to try and get yourself out of that kind of situation. But he was just so blasé and was just like, yeah, it was me. I killed Kevin. And authorities just couldn't begin to understand why this had happened. And Mark had actually started to just give even more horrific details about the crime. And he actually admitted that the pieces of flesh that Mark had cut off, he actually consumed afterwards. So after Mark's confession, he was immediately arrested. And once the news had reached Kevin's family and all of the town, they were just in shock. And Mark was from another town in Michigan. I think it was called Morris. I don't think it was very far from where Kevin was living. But this town was very small, very tight-knit, very farmy. You know, most people that lived there were either farmers or deer hunters, and everyone kind of knew each other. And Mark had been a resident of this town since he was a kid. He had always lived there. Everyone knew him. And they were all so shocked that something so disturbing could have happened, especially by this man as well. Like, everyone knew him, everyone liked him, everyone got along with him, and it was just so crazy. And it just must have been so horrific for Kevin's family. Just, it's bad enough to lose a child in any way, especially if your child's life had purposely been taken. But not only that, for it to happen in such a heinous way like it did with Kevin, you wouldn't get over it anyway. But dealing with how he died, it would just give you nightmares. And it's just the kind of thing that you don't expect to happen in real life. You hear these stories and you just think, no, there's no way. Or you watch a film where this kind of thing happens and you kind of enjoy the film, or, you know, it makes for a good film. It makes for good content because it's so shocking and it's so vile, but you kind of have that reassurance that no one's that crazy to do that in real life. Like, that would never happen. Sadly, it does. It's a very small percentage, and thankfully there isn't that many people that have committed crimes as disturbing as this. But this just goes to show that this can happen, and we need, don't get me wrong, I would never ever victim blame, and this is by any, like, no way is this Kevin's fault whatsoever. But these apps specifically, not even the people using them, but they need to have better policies, and they need to have more, like, they need to have safer restrictions, because things like this, like, when things like this occur, dating apps need to take some accountability for that. Mark Lutonsky was charged with murder and mutilation of a body, and his trial was supposed to happen in January of last year. And I'm not too sure if this is because of COVID. Obviously, when I'm in the UK, and COVID didn't properly hit until, well, it did hit in January, but we didn't all go into lockdown until about March. So it may be different. It may have been different in Michigan. I don't know if they went into lockdown a little bit earlier. They probably did. It seemed like everywhere went into lockdown a lot earlier than us, so that's probably just the case. So yeah, the trial kind of pretty much went to a standstill as soon as it begun. During like a video call between the judge and Mark, he was asked to just, something so simple, like just to confirm his identity. And Mark actually decided to state that he wasn't Mark Lutonsky. He is actually, in fact, a man named Edgar Thomas Hill. And then he decided to say that Mark Lutonsky was actually his nephew. As you can imagine, like, this just caused chaos. And that's obviously exactly what he wanted to happen. He knew he was going to go down. He admitted it. The evidence was as clear as day. There wasn't any getting out of it. So he probably thought to himself, what can I do? I'm going to disrupt this entire trial. And that's what he did. So the public and even like some family members and stuff were questioning if this guy was actually Mark Lutonsky, if it was the guy that Kevin had met up with that day. And like, investigators just had to reassure everyone and to be like, this is the guy. He's just being a dick. He's just trying to mess with us, and he's literally just trying to disrupt this trial, and to, because the trial was inevitable. It was going to go through. It was going to happen. But he just wanted to prolong it, I guess. Not prolong it. Yeah, prolong it. We'll go with that. It was clear that Mark was suffering with some kind of mental health illness. And he had done in the past as well. He had spent a lot of his life in and out of different psychiatric hospitals. During his trial, well, before he stood trial, Mark was actually sent to go through for a test to evaluate if he was competent enough to stand trial. So obviously with these tests, they just need to make sure that this person understands the charges that are being filed against them, and to understand the severity of the trial, of everything that they have done, and the repercussions for that as well. So when a person is being evaluated, I think it's only when you seek the insanity plea, then you have to be evaluated in order to see if you're competent or not competent in order to stand trial. So sometimes if you are found to not be competent, you can be held in a certain centre where you are rehabilitated, and then once you are rehabilitated, then you can go and appear in court and proceed with the trial. So on February the 24th, 2020, Mark was found to not be competent at all. He was stated to be insane. So this put the trial on a standstill even more. So like I said, it just it doesn't always completely stop the trial. Doesn't mean that it's not ever going to happen. It just puts it on hold for a while until that person is rehabilitated. However, sometimes it can mean that trial will probably never happen, and that's what is looking likely for Mark. So after this had happened, Mark was imprisoned. So generally with this, if you're found not to be competent, you will be in prison for a certain amount of time. I'm not too sure when, until you are able to attend this treatment centre, until there's a bed available. So that's what Mark was doing. So he was waiting to be taken into the treatment centre. I'm guessing he probably has been by now. Yeah, because this is nearly a year ago now. So I'm guessing by now, I'm pretty sure he is in the treatment centre now. But it was pretty busy. It was pretty full. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he is in there now. So Mark has now got 15 months from when he started the treatment centre. So again, I'm not too sure what that date was. So from when he started, he will have 15 months to get his diagnosis, I'm guessing, to find out, so he can undergo some kind of rehab and some medical and some kind of treatment, I'm guessing, so that they can find out what the best kind of medication is for him. Trying to find out what the kind of best physical treatments and stuff are good for him, and to just try and find a good treatment plan for him. And throughout the 15 months, he will continuously have tests to evaluate whether he is competent to stand trial. So it is looking likely that even if he finishes this treatment plan and everything else, he will probably never be fully competent to stand trial. So it is very, very likely that Mark will probably be placed into a permanent psychiatric facility, because he is seen as a danger to society, and I don't think that's ever going to change. So a treatment facility that specialises in people that are, individuals that are classed as high risk, such as Mark, I think is probably the best thing. I think this always strikes up a lot of debate with people as well, because I think people don't agree when someone has committed such a heinous crime. I think sometimes it infuriates the families. I could be wrong. Thankfully, I'm not a family member of a victim of any kind of murder, any kind of, any of these sort of crimes. But I have researched cases when family members have been angered when the perpetrator has ended up, pleading insanity and then taken to a mental health facility rather than being imprisoned. And do you know what? I don't really get that, because I can imagine, especially if you're not actually insane and you've just used that as a get out of jail free card, I think that person would soon regret it. So once obviously all the news hit about what Mark had done, what had happened to Kevin, the trial, everything else, some other news started to come about. that other people didn't really know of. However, the authorities did. Just 2 months before Kevin was murdered, there had been some complaints made about Mark. So in October and November, 2 men had called 911 to state that they had escaped Mark's home, that they had been like bound, tied up, everything else, and they had luckily, thank God, had managed to escape. But sadly they never pressed charges, and I think this was because they met on a dating site. I don't know if these men were out, so they didn't feel comfortable discussing their sexual life, which I totally get, but it's society that makes people feel this way. If there wasn't so many people that were so judgmental about different like sexual orientation, then people would feel more willing to come forward with these kinds of situations. And it's because so many people are made to feel like it's wrong, and they're made to feel embarrassed about their sexuality, and they shouldn't. So when things like this happen, it's hard for these people to open up, which is really, really sad. Of course, this is just speculation. That may not have been the reason why they didn't want to speak out about it. It could just be because maybe they were fearful of Mark, that he would come back and do it again. You know, like he would come back and finish off the job. I would be terrified of that. But yeah, these complaints were made and it didn't seem like anything was ever done about it. I know they didn't press charges, but surely you'd still be a bit mindful of it. So I've actually listened to the 911 call from this man named James Carlson, who was one of the men that was drugged and he was tied up in Mark's basement. And the phone call is just absolutely petrifying. You can just hear the sheer panic in his voice. He managed to cut himself free. He managed to find like a butcher knife and he cut himself free, which is just so lucky that he managed to do that. But you can just hear how sort of incoherent he is as well. So he must have just sort of like been continuously drugged, and oh, it's just absolutely terrifying. It just makes it all seem so much more real when you're hearing it from one of the victims as well. It's really scary. So I know that charges were never filed against Mark, but you think that police wouldn't just let that go, especially when there's been 2 complaints from 2 different people about the same thing. Surely you would look into it, or you would keep an eye on this person. Yeah. Especially when they have a history of being in mental facilities as well. So I just don't understand that. I think they dropped the ball there a bit. So this guy named James Carlson, he actually lived in New York and he worked in Michigan. So he was at the bus station and a guy approached him and his name was Mark Latunsky. This guy said that basically like he met Mark, and then like that he woke up chained up in Mark's basement. Like he did not remember an absolute thing. So I don't know at like which moment this guy drugged him, like how quickly this all happened. It's just utterly surreal. I do find this a bit bizarre, but so this guy, after he called like 911, he basically said that he didn't want to press any kind of charges. Now this is going to sound like I'm judging. I'm really not. I just don't really understand it. Doesn't mean that I'm passing judgment. It just means that I guess I'm a little bit ignorant. Thankfully, I've never been in this situation, so I don't know what I'd do. I really don't. Anyways, so James called authorities, told him what happened, everything else. So when he got picked up, he basically said that he wasn't going to press charges. He just wanted to be picked up. He wanted to just be taken to a bus stop or a train station so that he can basically go home and he could be somewhere safe. And he was fine. He had managed to escape and he was fine. He just didn't he didn't want to do anything about it. He just wanted to forget all about it and move on. So police basically complied with this, and they were like, okay. So they asked him a few questions, and then that was basically it. They just dropped him off and let him go home, which I just find really strange from the police more than anything. It's like they were just kind of like, oh, well, can't really be bothered to deal with this, so it's pretty convenient that he doesn't really want to do anything about it. So yeah, cool, see you later. So that is pretty much it for this case. That's kind of all the information that I've got. There weren't really a lot to work with. As far as I know, Mark is still in the treatment facility centre, and then it's looking probable that he will be in a permanent mental facility for the rest of his life. I hope you enjoyed this case as much as you can, especially when it contains cannibalism. Was beyond horrific. I actually felt a bit queasy as well at some points, which is really weird for me because I have like a cast iron stomach. Like, I used to love watching the films like Saw, Hostel. I used to find them really funny, and they never bothered me whatsoever. I would never even cringe. Would never even like, in, you know, the sort of brutal bits, I wouldn't even feel remotely sick at all. But this, oh my god, it's just awful. It's so sad. Such a sad story, and hopefully we can take something from this case and we can learn to be more safe, just online in general, not just dating online. You know, maybe using like a VPN as well, because they are a lot safer. I know they can cost money, but it is definitely worth it. I've ExpressVPN, and it is just amazing. It's so much better to use. And yeah, at least you get the reassurance that you are safe online as well, and you can't be hacked and have people trying to steal things from you online. And yeah, as well as that, be safe when you are dating online. Like I said, remember my little rules. I'm sure most of you already know all of this anyway, but it's good to just have a little reminder and just to raise some kind of awareness as well. So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the week, and I will see you again next Tuesday for another episode of Toxic Crime Tuesdays. I am going to be doing a serial killer episode because you guys love them so much. This one was actually requested, and I'm going to be doing it in 2 parts because it is a very long one and I want to do it justice. I want to, you know, be as detailed as I can. I want to do the background, the life of this person's parents, their childhood, where they went to school, the victims, some stuff about the victims, you know, everything, the investigation, the trial, all of that jazz. I want to do it all and be as descriptive as possible. So it is going to be a really interesting one. It was one that I was going to do today, but I needed some more time. I've been working on this for a little bit, sort of here and there, but I've been religiously studying it for the last couple of days. So yeah, I want to make sure I do it justice, and I will definitely be doing it next week. So do not miss that. It is going to be one hell of a case. Also, make sure to follow me on my Instagram, which is Coffee and True Crime Club. I will link it down in my description box, so be sure to click on it and follow me and join the fam. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fabulous week. So stay safe, stay spooky. Bye guys.